Hey guys, Vito from MoreBeer here. Today we're going to be making a yeast starter, so we're going to go over how to make one and why it's important. Hey, before we get started, if you like the content, be sure to subscribe. We've always got new stuff coming out, so make sure you subscribe to get those notifications. All right, so I ordered yeast. I got it in the mail today. Go to open it up. You know, my ice pack is melted. Question is my yeast still good? Yes, it is. Yeast is resilient. The ice pack is always going to be melted. It's only going to last for 6-7 hours tops in the mail. It took 2 days to get to me. Yeast is still good. It's viable. Yeast is super resilient. We use the ice pack just to kind of keep a better environment and buffer the time. But we're going to go ahead and make a yeast starter to let us know that the yeast is good, and it's also going to make better beer overall. So even if I went to the homebrew shop and picked this up, and brought it home cold, I would still make a yeast starter. That's just, you're going to make better beer. Traditionally, you'd make a yeast starter if you're making lagers or bigger beers. But in my process, what I found was making a yeast starter led to better beer every time. So essentially what we're doing is a mini ferment for our yeast. So we're gonna have our yeast, we have DME, dried malt extract, and we also have yeast nutrient. So we're gonna essentially do a ferment prior to our main fermentation. It's gonna allow the yeast to reproduce. So we're gonna have more yeast. We're also gonna have more viable yeast because they're gonna be healthy. They were just, created. Now I'm gonna show you the process on how to make a yeast starter. Let's do it. So today we're going to be using our yeast starter kit for 1000 ml batch size. It includes the 1000 milliliter Erlenmeyer flask, a ½ pound of light DME, and 1 ounce of Fermade K yeast nutrient. We're also going to be using a stir plate today. It basically essentially mixes up the solution, keeps the yeast up in liquid, also introduces oxygen along the way. In order for yeast to reproduce, they need oxygen. So by shaking it and constantly stirring it, we're agitating it and introducing more oxygen. So it's going to lead to more reproduction of yeast cells. You don't need a stir plate, but instead of you shaking it every hour or every 10 minutes, it does that job for you. It's what they use in labs, and it is the way to go. So what we have inside the stir plate, or on the stir plate, is what they call a stir bar. It's essentially a little food grade magnetic piece that spins from the bottom and creates that whirlpool that's going to be bringing the top down into the bottom and just agitating the entire solution through the entire starter process. Yeah, you turn it on so you could speed it up. It's variable speed, so you can go as fast or as slow as you want. Just a reminder, we want to make our yeast starter at least 24 if not 48 hours before we plan to make our batch of beer. Let's talk about where we want to do this. Obviously we're in our kitchen because we're using our burner, but we want it to be a sterile environment. So make sure you're spraying everything down with sanitizer. Keep any other bacteria away from our yeast starter. We want our yeast to be the only solution that reproduces in that yeast starter. All right, so let's go through the steps for making a yeast starter. So first thing we're going to do, we'll take our yeast out of the refrigerator, make sure it's warmed up to room temperature. All right, step 2, we're going to boil some water and mix in our DME solution. In the instructions, it says to do it in your Erlenmeyer flask. What I found is it's a little safer to do it in a pot. Reason being, just like your brew day, you might have a boil over. That Erlenmeyer flask has a smaller lid or opening at the top, and if you get a boil over that, it could cause a volcano, which could be dangerous. Also, when you're going from hot to cold, they're not supposed to crack, but it could happen. So I find it safer, and that's my recommendation. So we're gonna boil the solution for about 10-15 minutes. All we're trying to do is kind of heat up the DME, mix it into solution, get it ready for the next step. Since we boiled our solution in a pot, we're gonna need to transfer it into our Erlenmeyer flask. Obviously make sure everything's sanitized at this point, and then we're gonna cool it down. You could do an ice bath, you could pop it in the fridge or the freezer. We're just trying to cool it down to pitching temperatures. Make sure we cover it, spray everything down with sanitizer, and let it sit for 10 to 15, maybe 20 minutes. Just make sure that it's cool to the touch. All right, once our starter solution is ready to pitch the yeast, we're gonna open up the yeast packet, pour it into the flask and cover it back up with aluminum foil. Now we're going to place it somewhere warm and swirl it as often as possible. We have our magnetic stir plate, so we're going to go ahead and do that. That's going to lead to maximum cell growth. Then we'll wait at least 12 to 24 hours and pitch our yeast. So I've been brewing for over 15 years now. I always make a yeast starter every time, if I have the time. If not, I'd buy X amount of packets. But it's just, you're gonna have a more yeast, more viable yeast. It's gonna make better beer in the end. All right, you've seen how to make a yeast starter. For years, that's how I did it. But now there's a new product that actually makes it easier, proper starter. It's condensed wort. It essentially is the DME, your yeast nutrient, all in one, ready to go. You just add a little water, add your yeast, and it's ready to go. It cuts down the process. All right, that's it. Super easy. Bada boom, bada bing. It's ready to go. We're gonna be brewing with this weekend. So if you got any comments or questions, leave them below. We'll get back to you. Thanks for watching. Cheers.